Okay. So welcome to today's seminar. My name's Nancy Holm. As many of you know me who've been here before. This is audio. Okay. So I'm assistant director here at ISTC and the seminar organizer along with Beth Mashesky, who has helped with all the details for the seminar series we've had this spring. We have a schedule and flyers for the upcoming seminars out on the table outside the conference room here, or they're also listed online on our event calendar on the ISTC website. In case you cannot attend in person, all of the seminars are shown live via GoToWebinar and also recorded and archived on our website. We've had some delay recently in posting some of the recent seminars, but we'll be having those up later in the spring for anyone who wants to watch them. So to begin the seminar, I wanted to ask everyone to silence your cell phones if you haven't done so already. And we're going to, as we usually do, hold all of the questions to the end of the seminar, and then I'll come around with this microphone so we can record those for those listening online and for the archived version of the broadcast. And for those viewing online today, you can type in your questions at any time, and then we'll read those and answer those at the end also. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. We're very pleased to have with us Dr. Robert Marans. He's Emeritus Professor of Urban and Regional Planning for the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning at the University of Michigan. And he's a research professor emeritus at the Institute of Social Research there at Michigan. Bob first came to the University of Michigan as an undergraduate in 1952, and he earned his bachelor's degree in architecture there. He also received his master's degree in urban planning and there at Michigan, and then he worked for a number of years before returning to Michigan for his PhD. He earned his doctorate in 1971, and he's been at the University of Michigan ever since. So over the past 40 years, Dr. Marans has become known in particular for his research in different aspects of the built and natural environment and how those environments affect behavior and quality of life. The Environmental Design Research Association awarded Dr. Marans its 2012 Career Award. Dr. Marans has conducted evaluative studies and research dealing with the various aspects of communities, neighborhoods, housing, parks, and recreational facilities. Much of his research has been in the context of urban areas. His current research considers the impact of the built and natural environments on the quality of life, the role of neighborhood in the health of Detroit residents, and the issues of sustainability in the workplace. The latter examines the human dimensions of energy conservation at the University of Michigan. Dr. Marans is the author or co-author of 7 books, more than 100 articles and technical reports. He has lectured extensively throughout the U.S. and in a number of countries around the world. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Marans today for his presentation.
Thank you, Nancy. I've got a number of slides here, and I'm going to run through them rather quickly. But what I want to do is give you an overview of what we've been doing at the University of Michigan for the past half a dozen years, and particularly on this program called SCIP, the Sustainability Cultural Indicators Program. And by way, I'll give you some background about the university, which some of you may know, talk about how we got this program going, and then talk about the university's sustainability goals, and then show you a brief video which captures what in fact we are doing. Then I want to present a conceptual model for how we go about measuring or plan to measure cultural change related to sustainability, and then get into the details of the SCIP program, including its research design and the process that we've gone through, and then our approaches to the analysis, and present some of the findings, and then indicate where we are today, our current status, and what we're hoping to do for the future. For many of you, you're familiar with the University of Michigan, which is not that different from the University of Illinois. It's a very, very large campus We have 5 separate campuses occupying over 12 square kilometers, over 450 buildings, 40,000 students, and more than 38,000 faculty and staff, 80,000 computers. That was our last count about 3-4 years ago. I suspect it's more today. And all of this is releasing more than 722,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. So sustainability and energy conservation are big parts of what's going on at the university. About in 2008, 2009, the university decided to look at what was going on in various areas related to sustainability. And you can see along the bottom, we're talking about buildings, energy, transportation, land and water, food, purchasing, and recycling. And then there was an overlapping area called culture, which dealt with awareness, understanding, involvement, incentives, and commitment. And this integrative assessment was sanctioned by the university administration and was a year-long effort to look in a comprehensive way at what was happening not only at our university but at universities around the world and in other settings. So there were several teams created for each of these groups, and these were student teams run by faculty members, and maybe 8 or 10 students, and the students were paid for this to do a lot of the background research and essentially come up with the reports that were then fed up to this integration team, which then went to the executive council, the higher administration of the university, and out of that came a set of themes and goals for the university in the broad area of sustainability. Climate action, which is similar to what you have here in terms of what we wanted to accomplish by the year 2025. Our waste prevention goals, we had those. Healthy environments related to both protecting the natural environment and sustainable foods. And then we had a broad theme dealing with community awareness, where the president would say we would pursue stakeholder engagement, education, and evaluation strategies toward a campus-wide ethic or culture of sustainability. We didn't have specific goals at that point in time, but clearly there was going to be an effort to try to bring about this change in culture on campus and to track it and measure it over a period of time. Just last week in the university newspaper, there was a report, as you can see, called Sustainability Progress, Insights and Achievements Reports on Campus Goals. And this was, as I say, just last week, and it gave a quick overview of what the goals had been and what our status was to date in these various areas. So you could see with respect to reducing vehicle carbon output, we're on track. We're doing having some reduction there. We're shrinking the amount of waste that's been sent to landfills. We've had a slight reduction there. We've made efforts to protect the Huron River, which runs right through the campus area. We're on track there. We are also on track with respect to purchasing, and we have cut our greenhouse gas emissions not as much as we had hoped. In fact, they've increased, and this is largely attributable to the fact that we've been building more than we had been back in 2011 when these goals were established. Last year we had a new president come into office, and the first thing he did, or one of the first things he did, was to say, what's the status of our goals on campus? And he created 3 committees, one dealing with energy conservation, another dealing with waste, and a third dealing with culture. And he makes the statement in his report, which was issued last November, that we're going to continue to increase the involvement of students, faculty, and staff. The university will enhance its community engagement and behavior programs, such as the Planet Blue Ambassador Program, the Student Leaders Program, and the Student Innovations Program, and so forth. And that the Sustainability Cultural Indicator Survey Program that tracks progress and informs operational improvements will continue. So that's the work that we've been doing here, and it's, again, it's primarily the last goal, dealing with community awareness. So this was a video that we had just prepared. Let's see if we can get this. Whoop. The mouse? Okay. Got it here, I think. Can we get the volume up?
There is an increasing awareness that issues of climate change and environmental degradation have become more pressing. While we have the technological know-how to reduce CO2 emissions and conserve and maintain natural resources, we lack the political and societal commitment to deal with these issues in a timely manner and to recognize that societal changes are needed. That is, society needs to shift from a culture of consumerism toward a culture of sustainability. A culture of sustainability requires individuals, households, and organizations to become aware of short-term and long-term consequences of their actions on humans and ecosystems, and to adjust their behaviors to effectively deal with the challenge. Many universities, corporations, and cities are committed to implementing sustainability in their community, but the University of Michigan is unique in its efforts to measure and monitor progress in moving towards a culture of sustainability. The work is being done through a partnership of the university's Institute for Social Research and Graham Sustainability Institute. It involves annual surveys taken by students, faculty, and staff in order to measure levels of awareness and behavior regarding energy conservation, waste reduction, the natural environment, and sustainable foods. The survey makes science to evaluate, analyze, and improve policy, plant operations, and educational programs at the university. Visit us online to learn more at sustainability.umich.edu.
So that's a quick overview of what, in fact, we are doing. And what I want to do now is get into a little more detail on this and how are we actually moving toward a culture of sustainability and measuring it. So we obviously talk about it in terms of getting people engaged and the broad educational programs that not only are going through the classroom but also through the programs that are introduced for our faculty, our staff, as well as our students. And then, as I said, we're very much interested in measuring, monitoring, and evaluating our progress as we move toward a culture of sustainability, which is not going to happen overnight. So we have a number of things going on. In terms of our efforts to try to change the culture, we have a variety of things that are happening that are focusing on our faculty and staff and also focusing on our students. A number of these things also overlap with one another. For example, we've had annual sustainability town halls. We produce an annual sustainability guide and annual reports. We have a program that goes on throughout the campus called Recyclemania. We have an Earth Fest every fall. These are things that really everyone can become involved in. But then there are specific things like this certificate program that is geared primarily for faculty and staff. They go online. They essentially become certified by developing a greater understanding of what is happening and what's needed with respect to sustainability. And then there are a number of student groups and student activities that are initiatives that are geared primarily for students. So the question is, what are we doing toward this whole idea of measuring, monitoring, and evaluating a culture? Well, first of all, our definition of culture is, we came up with this a few years ago, and it was mentioned in the video. A culture it's one in which individuals are aware of major environmental and social economic challenges, are behaving in sustainable ways, and are committed to a sustainability lifestyle for both the present and the future. So how do we measure, monitor, and evaluate it? Well, it's through this program called SCIP, Sustainability's Cultural Indicator Program, and it's a multi-year program of research designed to measure and track culture on campus so as to inform and guide university operations and policies. It's not just a research program in the sense of doing research. We want this to be heavily utilized by people within the university, our facility managers, people in the various parts of the university, and also our faculty who are teaching increasingly teaching courses that deal with some aspect of sustainability. So the framework that we came up with as part of the integrative assessment was to begin to look at knowledge, awareness, behaviors, engagement, commitment, and other factors across several different domains, such as travel and transportation, food, recycling, purchasing, and so forth, and address these to our students, faculty, staff, and our alumni. And these would be done through these annual surveys. And then at some point, we would want to link it to some of the hard measures of energy use, tonnage of waste recycled or going to the landfill, and so forth. And so this was the broad plan, the broad framework that we had set up. And we set this up in a different way. We said, okay, we were going to look at these things not only in a general way, but specific to our university. That is, what did people know about recycling, about alternative transportation options in a general way, but what did they know about them specifically at the university? And these were the broad topics that we were focusing on, and these all really related to the university goals that we had set up. So this was sort of the broad program that we wanted to put forth. What we decided to do, we were going to do these web surveys annually, and the idea was to target around 2,000 undergraduate students, 400 graduate students, 750 faculty, and 750 staff, and then create also a panel of students that we would be able to follow these individuals over time. So we were not only looking at cross-sections of different groups of students, faculty, and staff, but also individual students who we could see what changes were occurring within them. And we designed questionnaires that were largely, well, very much similar to one another for faculty and staff on the one hand, for the students on the other, but then of course there were questions that were unique to students and questions that were unique to the faculty and staff. We also were able to collect on an annual basis supplemental data dealing with energy use and waste and recycling and so forth. So just to give you an idea of the content of the questionnaire, you could see we have on one hand the substantive areas of travel, transportation, conservation and waste and so forth. But then on the other hand, we have, what are we looking for? We're looking for levels of knowledge, people's dispositions, behaviors, and obviously a number of demographic characteristics of who is being queried in these surveys. Just to give you an idea of what the questionnaire looked like, here was how much do you know about the following at the University of Michigan: recycling of glass, plastic, paper, electronic waste, property, disposition, and so forth. This was a typical awareness question. We have these annual reports which produce all our distributions of all the questions in them, maps showing where people are more aware or less aware of things, where people are behaving differently and so forth. We have databases that are available, and the idea would be that other researchers, not only at the University of Michigan, but elsewhere, might want to work with the data that we've collected. Obviously, we have so much data, and we can only deal with so much at one point in time. And then we have a composite table, which is online, which shows the changes over time. And now we have, as I said, 4 years of data, because this began in 2012. In addition to the individual questions, we created what we call these cultural indicators, sustainability cultural indicators, made up of individual questions. So this, for example, on the climate action, we have just one question that dealt with travel behavior that summarized that, but there were 4 questions that were combined to deal with their responses to conservation behavior. And you can see that these primary indicators relate to the broader goals that have been established for the university. We have secondary goals, although they're not they're as important, dealing with the levels of engagement in terms of sustainability on campus as well as in the broader world. And one question dealing with commitments, several dealing with their dispositions, and finally 8 questions that were used to evaluate how they thought the university was doing in terms of its sustainability initiatives. So we've been doing a lot of work with the data. We mine the data in terms of basic descriptive statistics, which I indicated are in our reports. We have spatial analysis, so we know geographically where levels of awareness are higher or lower on campus. We are able to link our survey data with some of the environmental data, the objective data that I mentioned, and we're developing some causal models which are trying to help us understand and the university understand why certain things are happening or not happening. So just to give you a flavor, this is the kind of table that we have in the report where we can show the, for each question, the distribution of responses for all students and each subset of our undergraduate students as well as graduate students as well as faculty and staff. And as I say, we have this now for 3 years. We're just compiling this for our 4th year as well. This is the composite table where we're looking at 3 years of data. And as you can see in this particular question, how often do you set thermostats to 65 degrees or lower during cool or cold weather? And the percentages are pretty much the same over the 3-year period. Whereas in the question about changing the temperature during the warm weather month, we can begin to see some significant changes. So this is the way we're presenting the information. Another way is through these graphs. And here you can see in terms of levels of awareness among the staff and faculty on awareness of waste prevention, sustainable foods, natural resource protection, transportation, travel and transportation, and the university's sustainability initiatives. There isn't much change. Some change, and some of which is significant, but for the most part, it's not quite dramatic. What we've done is try to standardize or create a common scale on these indicators running from 0, the lowest, to 10. And you can see awareness of university initiatives is pretty low for our faculty and our staff. Some of the behavioral changes, again, these are pretty flat. A few significant changes in terms of their on the sustainability food purchases. This is where we ask whether they shop at a local farmer's market, buy organic foods, and so forth. There's been some change there on the part of both faculty and staff in a significant positive direction. This is on the students. Again, we can see on their behaviors, slight change in waste prevention behavior, slight change in their sustainable food purchases, and an increase in their engagement in sustainability activities both on campus as well as off campus. Now, when we look at the panel of students, we see even more dramatic change, particularly their engagement on campus. That's gone up quite dramatically as they move from well, what level they were at in 2012 to where they were at in 2014. And our recent look at the 2015 data is that these trends, in fact, have continued. Their waste prevention behavior, on the other hand, had gone down. We don't know why, whether they moved out of the resident halls into private housing and didn't bother with it anymore. We suspect that might be the case there. So that's sort of an example of the kinds of things that we're able to show and report from our data. And as I say, these surveys are going to continue. A decision has recently been made to not do this on an annual basis, but to move to an every other year model of these campus-wide surveys of our students, faculty, and staff. I mentioned the fact that we are a very diversified, spread out university, much like the University of Illinois. And we've created, working with the operations people at the university, these regions or zones. So we have the central campus area. We have an east campus. We have an athletic campus, which is quite distinct from the main part of the academic campus. And then we have a north campus area, which has our engineering schools, our faculty of music and performing arts, as well as architecture and urban planning. And we're able to pull out the responses of our students, faculty, and staff by each of these geographic areas, each of these campuses and regions. And we can see that there are differences. In this case, we're looking at conservation behavior between 2012 and 2014 for these different parts of campus. And in some cases, we're seeing improvements, but in other cases, we're seeing no change or even a decrease. Similarly, we're able to compare different parts of campuses with respect to the waste prevention behavior. And we can do this, and we're providing this kind of information to our plant operations people, our people responsible for waste reduction and so forth. They, in turn, are then modifying their programs or emphasizing their programs in different places, but not in other places. So there's a lot of use of the data as we develop it and present it to people, and it's generating many, many new ideas. One of the things that we're trying to do is look at the environmental data in relation to the survey data. So we have, as I mentioned, the environmental data dealing with waste, recycling, energy, and CO2 emissions. And we've pulled this all together in a data set, which we call objective environmental data. And this is organized by, for faculty and staff, by these different regions. And for students, we organize it by student housing, because obviously we can't do it for students who live off campus in private apartments and homes. And what we're doing is then linking this to the survey data to see what the relationships are between what in fact is actually happening on campus in terms of waste, in terms of energy use and CO2 emissions, and seeing how that links to the responses of people. So the idea would be, okay, we're looking at waste prevention behavior. We want to see how that relates to recycled material, which relates to trash that goes to disposable sites. And we looked at this, would expect, well, let me go back here. Yeah, we did not see, we looked at the change in these things for different parts of campus, and we did not see any relationship between what was actually happening on the ground and what people were reporting in these different regions. When we looked at the difference between recycling trash and waste prevention behavior for students in the housing, we did find a relationship that, in fact, as the amount of waste going to recycling, waste going to landfills, and the recycling, the landfills went down, the recycling went up. We did find that related to actual reports on recycling use by the students in these various resident halls. So we were encouraged by this kind of finding that, in fact, some of the programs that were being introduced in the resident halls were having an impact. As I say, recycling went up, trash went down, and the behaviors improved. So this obviously led, and there are certain interventions that obviously impacted these things. What we're doing now is an experimental program with respect to composting, which we've introduced in one of the resident halls. And we've asked questions about composting too, and we're going to use the SCIP data to determine whether in fact there's going to be more change in the resident halls that the experiment is being tried in compared to other resident halls on campus. So far it looks like it is having an impact both in terms of students' knowledge about composting and their awareness of what the university is doing and what can and cannot be composting. So we're very hopeful that, again, our data that we'll generate next year will be able to show big changes between this one resident hall where the experiment is taking place and the other resident halls on campus. The idea being is that if, in fact, it is successful, we can then say, okay, we're going to introduce composting beyond the food services in the resident hall to all resident halls in all parts of those resident halls. So that's the goal. The notion of these experiments is becoming extremely important because rather than having the university invest in a composting program university-wide, let's try it out, use some of the data to evaluate its impact, and if in fact it's working, we'll extend it to other parts of the university. If it's not working, we can modify it or abandon it or try something altogether different. So this is becoming one of the valuable things with this SCIP program. It's not only giving us a way of monitoring what's happening on campus over time, but it's a way of testing, using the data to test out different trials that we might have in throughout the campus dealing with various aspects of sustainability. So we saw, as I said, that waste prevention behavior went up, recycling went up, and trash to disposable facilities went down. I mentioned the panel analysis that we've been doing. Here's an example. We said that we think there are a lot of things that are going to influence students' engagement in sustainability activities on campus in terms of what program they're in, whether they're male or female, whether they're freshmen, sophomores, seniors, whatever, the housing type that they're in, the number of roommates they have, where they came from. We have information about we happen to ask about the zip code that they, where their high school was located, where they lived when they were a senior in high school. And so we were able to identify something about their preconditioned neighborhood in terms of its socioeconomic characteristics and so forth. Anyway, we said that student engagement was going to influence not only their awareness of waste prevention, but also the change in their perception of waste prevention over time. And that in turn would influence their behavior, change in their behavior in conservation behavior at home. And these things would also be influenced by the behaviors in the first year of the panel. So we were able to show that some of these relationships did hold up. There were some predetermined factors that influenced the level of students' engagement and the change in their level of student engagement. So this kind of information has been reported to the university in these annual reports that we've put together. And again, these are all on the website if you're interested in looking at them further. And of course, we're making presentations similar to this one to various units on campus and working closely with people in the operational units. So where are we today? Well, as I said, we're currently analyzing the data for our fourth year survey, which was done this past fall. We're designing and conducting interventions or these tests and experiments in other parts of the university. I mentioned the composting example is one. We're continually analyzing the data in many, many ways. And we have other faculty that are getting involved in the data analysis. In fact, it's being used in classes in statistics, in sociology, in natural resources, and so forth. And we're continuing to promote the uses of the data both within the university and outside. We have people at other universities that are working with our data. We're not sure what they're doing with it, but the data are publicly available. And finally, we're exploring opportunities for replication of this whole process, not only at other universities, but in other kinds of organizations. We think this idea of changing the culture is applicable in the corporate world and also in cities and within neighborhoods. So there are places where things are happening. The way we've conceptualized it is, okay, if this represents what we're doing at Michigan, maybe something could be done here at Illinois, a replication where there would be many of our items that would overlap, but there would be things that would be unique to what, in fact, is happening at the University of Illinois. And these are some of the other schools that we have been talking to. In fact, there are plans to move forward with a replication of this at NYU, and we've discussed it with Rutgers too. My dream is to see this being done throughout the Big Ten, all universities to have a program dealing with changing culture and measuring that change. And indeed, if we could go worldwide, that would even be more exciting. So that really gives you a quick overview of what we've been doing, and be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Marans, and we'll open it up for questions here first from our audience, if there are any.
Very interesting study. What I go back to is with your charts, and one of the key things that you had was actually, if I read it properly, waste generation had actually increased instead of decreased. Did I get that right from going back?
The one where we were looking at actual waste in connection with the amount. of recycling increase, the waste that went to landfills, I think, was decreased.
Right.
Right.
So you had that factor. But
Right.
yet when you went to the surveys, it seemed like people kind of rated those as high numbers, which would mean that it was something that at least they were aware of, correct?
Right.
So it's intriguing. So the question is why they're very aware of it, yet overall
their behaviors improved too.
So
their increased awareness and their behaviors, these are the students in the resident halls, that increased.
But why did overall then you had, again, going back to that number, why would you explain that you had the kind of the increase in waste generation overall? Why do you think you still had that, even though you had the improvements in behavior and that type of thing?
I'm not sure that the waste did improve. We could go back and look at the data, but you're saying the increase, there was an increase in the actual amount of waste?
I think if I read it properly on one of your slides, if you can go back to that.
Okay. See if I...
At the very beginning, I thought I saw that you said that the waste actually increased the waste generation or something. But this was at the very beginning of the talk.
Okay.
And you mentioned that there was more construction going on.
Well, that's with respect to energy use. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe it could be some more because of construction, but it would be interesting to know. You certainly had your behaviors, so those were high. I mean, you're getting numbers of around, on your scale, the higher the number, the more aware they are.
Right. In this case, let me use the pointer here. You could see that there was an increase in waste prevention behavior.
Right.
Here. For the individual, these are for individual students, the ones who were in the panel that we followed over time. This was a drop-off.
Right. But still, the overall, relative to the other numbers, still pretty high. Now, if you keep going back a few more slides.
Okay, this.
And, much further where you had, before you got into the detailed breakdown.
Okay, these are for faculty, staff.
Yeah.
The other one was talking about students only.
But this, if you go further, and a couple more before you got in kind of the survey data.
I'm not sure exactly where.
I think I know where he's.
Okay. Second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Keep going. One more. When you showed that data, go back.
Okay, and in terms of this, the recent report.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's go. It's back.
Yeah, it was right on that slide when you showed.
Before, after this. Yeah.
It doesn't
Keep
want
going.
to appear here. Keep going. Okay, one more.
Next
Now
one.
go one more.
Now, okay, it's
And
the one that's here.
One more time. Yeah.
There. Okay, there.
When you go
Okay,
over
so
there,
this is what. All right, so you're talking about.
where it says, you got greenhouse gas emissions on there, their amount of weight, shrink the amount of waste sent to
Okay, second
landfills
one
by
here.
40. Slight reduction, decrease still needed.
Okay, this is for the overall campus.
Mhm.
Okay. So the other one was talking about what's happening in the resident halls. Is that?
Maybe, yeah, I guess, so what you're saying is that, I guess the thing that throws off is why didn't you see more of an improvement?
More change in the behaviors? I can't answer that. I don't know. It's a slight reduction. 38.3% decrease is still needed. Okay.
But you would have expected
More.
Based on, if I'm rating it as 7, it's high
Yeah.
on my mind. But unless you're just, because people were aware, but why didn't you get more of a reduction? I guess that would have been my question overall. Because, and again, because
Okay,
to
fair
me,
question, yeah.
this is a really good quantitative measurement here, I would assume. Whereas the other ones, you know,
We're talking about the behaviors.
When you probe people, people can answer whatever they want. They can say, yeah, I just really believe in this. Then you say, okay, well, were you willing to pay for it? It's like, oh, well, no, I'm not willing to pay for it. But then it's kind of, you know, a moot point. So.
Well, that's something that we could look at more closely. Yes.
Yes, I had a question on one of the graphs that showed, I think it was on the medical campus, they were the least doing waste reduction, and why do you think that would be?
Well, what I've understood is that there's, you know, the waste coming out of a hospital and out of clinics and labs and all that is very different than, you know, traditional waste that we find in office buildings, classroom buildings, and so forth. And in some ways, they operate pretty independently of the rest of the university. We've had meetings with their facility managers, and they have real problems in dealing with the doctors and the nurses and the clinical people in terms of getting them to buy into a lot of the programs that they've been pushing. So, and that showed up in the survey results, that the medical campus essentially had poorer responses than other parts of the campus. Yeah.
Okay, are there other questions here?
Yeah.
So I have a question about the student panel. On what basis were they selected for a longitudinal study, and were they asked about prior environmental experiences, worldviews?
No. The panel in the first year, we took a subset of all the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, not seniors because they were going to be off campus afterwards, and we essentially went after them, and we've repeated that process in the second year and in the third year as well. So we may have, and we're doing some analysis on this now, we may have some students that responded in 2012, skipped 2013 and 14, but came back as seniors and participated again. So we're looking at those as opposed to those who answered in 12, 13, 14, and 15. So we think that the people who responded all 4 years would be much more committed, which was much more engaged and so forth. But we don't know yet. We're just looking at those data.
And so did you collect any data for their prior experience?
No, we don't. We don't really have anything about their behaviors prior or their levels of awareness prior to their coming into the university. The only thing we're beginning to see is that over, you know, our cross sections from 2012 to 2015, people are coming in with a little bit more of an understanding of sustainability. Now, we suspect that that might be something they're being exposed to in high school or at home. We don't know that, and we just don't have any way of knowing.
Other questions here at all?
Hi, of the behavior change strategies, I'm just wondering if maybe you could share something that maybe stood out as being successful compared to the other examples.
In terms of behavioral change?
As far as the specific strategies goes, when you were doing the trial and error examples.
On the composting?
Whatever,
well,
specific waste reduction, but if composting.
Well, the composting is the one that I can talk about because we're just finishing that up right now. And we gave out a short questionnaire just last week. In that one resident hall, there are about 1,000 students living there, and we suspect that even though there may have been only 100, 150 students participating in this experiment, because we had them sign up and volunteer, and they were given a little bucket to collect things in their rooms and then deposit it in the waste closet in the resident hall. And those wastes were collected, and I think after the first week, I think there was like 150 pounds of compost material that had been collected. It was they weighed them at the end of the week. We suspect that even though there are relatively small number of participants in this experiment, that it's being observed by everyone in that resident hall. When we follow the sample of people in that resident hall in the future, we will expect those individuals, and this is what we're intending to do, to be much more sensitive to composting, and both in terms of their awareness and their practices.
Anyone else here? Okay, well, I'd like to thank Dr. Marans again for his interesting presentation today.
Okay.